Hi, I'm Gary and welcome to my shop. In this video I'm going to show you how to make these pie and pizza servers, and it's made of a food grade stainless steel. You make the handle for it and it comes out like this. This one happens to be a Bolivian rosewood that I did, and I'm going to make another one here and show you as I go along exactly how it's done. Now this kit comes in this box here from Rockler. I'll put a reference in the description below as to the part number for this, and it comes as this hardware here. Then you make the handle for it. It comes with a threaded insert here that you insert into the handle, so you can then screw this on to the handle or remove it for washing and stuff. Also, it comes with this Allen wrench for inserting this threaded insert into your handle, so you can glue it in place with some epoxy glue. As far as the instructions go, it's just one piece of paper here, and it doesn't give you any illustrations or anything, just text explaining what to do. So you kind of have to know what you're doing, and that's the purpose why I'm doing this video, is to show you how I do this, to make up for what these instructions may be lacking. So I'll give you a few tips and tricks and how I do this. So stay tuned, we'll get this going. Okay, first step we're going to do here in doing this is to select a spindle blank for making our handle. This one happens to be a Purple Heart and it's 12 inches long. I only need about a 6-inch blank for this, and actually it'll wind up a little less than 6 inches because of a parting process we'll do on the lathe in making this. So I'll cut this in half at my bandsaw, and then I'll mark the center on both ends of the blank. One end's going to be where I'm going to put that threaded insert into. The other end is going to be where I'm going to mark in order to put my live center on my lathe, so I can do the turning. So next step, to the bandsaw. Okay, so here at the bandsaw, I've taken my spindle blank here and marked it at a 6-inch length that I'll cut it at, and I measured it out with my tape measure. Then I used my square here and my scribe to mark that into the wood. Or you can use whatever kind of marker you happen to have. Now this comes with a wax coating all over it, and that's just to stabilize the wood over time and to protect it from moisture and getting any defects in it. So if some of this is a bit thick and makes it so it won't sit flat, then you may have to scrape some of this off with a putty knife so you can get a good flat surface when you're working with this. Okay, so here at the bandsaw, I've got this jig and a fence set up for cutting pieces like this, like a cross cut. I've got this little sled that I built and put a cross piece there, and this goes through the blade. I got it squared up so it cuts a good square cut for me. And what I'll do is I'll put my workpiece on here, bring it up, make sure my height is above the wood and aligned to where I want to make my cut, and then I'll back it up, turn on my blade and make the cut. I've got a couple pieces here for making my handles for the pizza and pie server. So I've got my block here, or my spindle blank, that I had cut to length, and I cleaned off one of the ends here that had the wax on it with a putty knife, got that good and clean. And then the other end here is the end that I'd cut. Now what I'm going to do is to use my squid center marker. What it does is it's got 4 legs on it, and it centers itself on the 4 corners of my workpiece here. And I get this kind of relatively straight, and then I can take a hammer and just give it a tap, and it gives me a mark that's pretty well perfectly center on that. Flip it over, and I'll mark the other end. Get all the four corners on there, get it relatively standing straight, and got a good mark again for center. Now my next step is going to be going to my sander, and what I'm going to do is get these ends to make sure they're squared up with the sides here. Alright, so here I'm going to sand the end of these so they're square with the other surfaces here. And what I did is I took a putty knife, cleaned this off a bit and scraped it so it would be pretty flat to get rid of that wax off of there, so I can get a good square fit here. And I'll sand this until I get a good square end on it. I'll check it periodically and see how it looks as we go. So here we go. It's getting close. A little more work to it. That looks pretty good. That's looking pretty good. I'm flat on both ends, so I'm ready to go with that. Now I know with this particular sander, the points I've got here, these white marks I've got, is where I've got a good, perfectly flat surface behind there on the belt. So I know I'm getting good and square with that to the table here and to my fence. So at the drill press here now, I've got my spindle blank that I'm making the handle out of mounted into this vertical drill press, so I can drill the hole into the end of this blank. Now, the instructions call for, if you're going to use a hardwood like I'm using here, to drill a 3/8 inch hole, and this is going to be for the threaded insert to go into. If you're using a softwood, then you'd use a 11/32 drill bit, which is a little bit smaller than this. Then what I will do is to drill this hole to 1 inch deep. So I've got my stop set on my drill press for 1 inch. Alright, so I've got that to depth. Now my next step is going to be to thread the threaded insert into this and then mount it to the lathe and start the turning process. Of course, what I'll probably do is stop by the bandsaw again and trim off the edges here so it's not quite as sharp of an edge, so it'll be more of a hexagonal shape instead of a four-cornered shape. Alright, so back at the bandsaw here, I'm going to trim off these edges here so it's not such a square shape and more of a hexagonal shape. That'll make it a lot easier for turning on the lathe to get down to a good round cylindrical shape as quickly as possible. So this will make it a lot easier to get to a round cylindrical shape quicker, and not have to knock off those four corners. Okay, the next step here is to drive in this threaded insert into the end of this block, this hole that we had drilled, 3/8 diameter hole. And what we do is we want to try use this Allen wrench that comes with it, and we try and get this in there as straight as we can and get it going as straight as we can, and then drive it all the way down, backing up on occasion to kind of free up any wood grains that you've been cutting through. It's just like using a tap and anything else. You got to back up once in a while to clear out some of the cuts. And get to the bottom part, and get it down snug where you're just at or slightly below the surface of the piece here. And I'm not gluing this yet. I'm going to mount it up on my lathe without gluing this yet, because the spin of the lathe is going to tend to tighten this into any more anyway. And when I get done with this later, I'm going to look at the wood grain and see how do I want to orient this wood grain versus the paddle itself, so I show the most interesting part of the wood grain on the top part here. That's one of the techniques that the instructions don't tell you about. So I will do this now and go to the lathe. Now, perhaps we have a learning opportunity here. This is from an issue that I encountered. I wanted to show you this and how this threaded insert cracked on me. Now, it seems the wood was just too hard to install this insert, despite that I drilled the hole for hardwood. While this one is canary wood with a Jenkins hardness of 1550, it still proved to be too hard to drive in. Sometimes wood can be harder or softer than their ratings say, and some of the same species are denser than others. And even within the same piece, densities can vary. I cut this off and I tried to put in the insert again, and it still proved to be too hard, and it cracked again on me. Luckily, these threaded inserts are available at your local big box stores, and I happen to have a few in my drawer already. So with the second failure, I decided to use my last one on something softer. Okay, so I've got my blank mounted onto the lathe here, into the chuck, the mandrel here for that. And what I do is, you get some of these long ones here and you drive those threaded inserts in. You never know exactly how perfect that's going to be balanced there. And one thing you can do is put it like that, turn your lathe down to the slowest speed, which for me is around 500, and see how much of a wobble you get out of it. This one's not too bad. But typically what I'll do is I'll slowly push my tailstock up to close to the end of the spindle of this piece here. And I'll lock my tailstock in place. And what I'll do is I'll advance my quill until it engages, and I get a little bit of a noise there. So then that'll work pretty good as far as keep me good and concentric and on a good balance once I've got the tailstock off of it and doing my finishing work. You can see I'm running pretty smooth there. It's just I'll get it rounded up now to a cylindrical shape and then start shaping from there. Have to get my height set for my tool rest. So I'm cutting at about the center of this. Okay, so that's looking about right. So I'm going to start getting this to a cylindrical round, and then I'll start shaping. So now that's to a pretty good cylindrical round here, and from here I can start shaping it. This will be the head part, so this will be the slimmest part because I got to turn it down to the diameter of this piece here on the bushing. Then this will be the tail end where I'll round it off, then eventually I'll take away the tailstock to do some finishing work on that. As I get to some of the finer shaping here, I'm going to use some of my smaller carbide tools for more control. I'll get a basic shape to it and then I'll refine it further. I'll start some of my parting process on the end here, but I'll leave enough on there to still keep control of this. I'm going to slope this handle more this way. I'm going to check the shape and feel of this, make sure it's coming out about right, and that it fits, you know, a good handle grip. Actually, it's got to feel maybe a little bit small to me because my hands are big, and if women are going to be using this a lot for pie servers and stuff, we don't want this handle to be too big that they have difficulty holding it. So that's looking pretty good there, and what I'm going to do now is to start doing some sanding Then after I got the sanding done, I'm going to separate it at the end here, and then I'll finish off the end here too with some sanding. Alright, going to start the sanding here. Pull my banjo away. Get that out of the way. I'm going to start out with grits from 150 to 240 to 320 to 400 and finishing up with 600, and then some 4-knot steel wool. Now with this, I slowed this down to about 800 RPM. And just work the sandpaper along here. Okay, so I keep sanding that until it gets pretty smooth, and then I'll finish up with the 600 grit. Okay, I've got this sanded down to 600 grit here now, and what I'm going to do now is to part this here at the end and then finish up sanding the end of that. As I get down towards the end here, I'll start holding my hand here to catch it when this separates. Basically, it's separated there. This piece has come loose, so separate that back. I've got that end there, and I can finish that up a little bit with the lathe chisel and then sand it. Coming along there. Okay, so now I've got this all finished up and sanded to a good finish. Next step is going to be to take this off of here, off the mandrel, and then I'm going to put it on one of those threaded rods that I have. Okay, I'll put it on this threaded rod here, which is long enough to fit into this chuck here and still give me a finger grip on it, so I can put on the finish. Then I can take this off and go put it into a stand. Then a low speed. I'm going to put on some of this wipe on poly here, so I'll put some of this on a rag. Then wipe that on. Get some on the end. Rub it in. I'm going to take this off here, put it on a stand, and let it dry. Alright, so now I've got a finished handle that I want to put on to this pie serving part, the hardware. And I've noticed I've got a couple of interesting parts on this handle that I like to get facing up when it's on there. I got this part here, it's got some of the sapwood in it that gives it an interesting look. Opposite of that, I've got a good cathedral shaped like wood grain to it also. So I'd like to get one of those too facing upwards once it's on. So I'll screw this on and see how it comes out. Sometimes you're lucky and they wind up lining up pretty perfectly for you. We'll see here. Let's see. Yeah, that one's a bit off. This interesting part is on the side, and that's on the side also. I like to have one of these kind of like right at the top here. So what I'll do is I'm going to unscrew this. I'm going to take this Allen wrench that came with the kit and just tweak it a little bit more in. And I'll see how that works out. That gives me perfect alignment. That's great. So I will take this off again. Now I have to take this insert out and glue it and stick it back in again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark with a Sharpie marker here some alignment marks for that, so that when I screw this back in with the epoxy glue on it, I know exactly where to stop with it so I can get this aligned correctly. So that'll be my next step, get that glued in and then put these together. Well, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it and you got some inspiration, please give me a like and hit that thumbs up icon. Also, please share it with your family, friends, and fellow craftspersons. And please subscribe by hitting on that little red icon down in the lower right corner, and be sure to hit the bell icon so you won't miss any new videos or posts that may be useful to you. So please leave your comments, and I'd like to hear what you think, your suggestions, and what you may be interested in seeing. Also, please participate in the community posts on my home screen here. Now, we get to share a lot of information there on a lot of topics. For more information and links, see the description below. There's a lot of great information there, so check back often. I also post updates and corrections there. The question to you is, what do you think? What do you want to see? What comments do you have about the tools that I used? What would you change about this? What techniques can you share with us? So, as they say on the Red Green Show, if the ladies don't find you handsome, at least they should find you handy. Thank you.